So we're going to be looking at how the attitudes of a group that surrounds an individual can affect the motor behaviors for that person, right? So that group could be society as a whole, could be the family, could be their peer group, okay? So for example, we see a difference in where we grow up with the kind of bat and ball game we play, right? We grow up in New Zealand, Australia, England, India, then they're going to be playing cricket. We grow up in the Americas, then it's going to be baseball. If you go up in France, I don't think they play either of those games in France. On a large scale anyway, okay? And the games have similarities, right? They both have a hard ball that gets thrown at someone with an implement to hit it. They both have a large game field with outfielders to catch the ball and throw it back, right? And there the similarities stop, okay? Rules are completely different. The shape of the implement is different. The shape of the running pitch is different in order to score. Okay. So, which culture I grew up in can make a big difference. Other elements, and we're going to look specifically at gender. Right? So we've got gender, we've got race, we've got religion, we have nationality. All of these are cultural variables that can impact movement behaviors. Right? Imagine if you're a young female growing up in a Muslim country where you are ordered to wear a jihad. Right? How does that impact your ability to learn movement skills, or practice movement skills you were able to learn earlier because you don't have to wear that when you're smaller, right? So maybe when you were young, you learned to really love jumping and running, but now you've got this big blanket on. How do I do that? So when we look at these groups, the attitudes the groups hold, the social values the groups hold, the mores of the groups, influence the behaviors of individuals who are within that group and want to identify with that group. Right? So the pervasive, the overriding ideas of the group as a whole get taken on often by individuals when they join that group. It's very difficult to be part of a group and stay within your own individual ideas and not kind of mesh with the rest of the group necessarily. So we often have an ideal of what we expect from people and how we expect people to behave based upon where they come from, what they look like, right, how old are they. And that group can encourage an atmosphere that positively encourages acceptable movement patterns, right? And it may discourage movement patterns that are not seen as socially acceptable for that individual. And that can play a large role in the motor behaviors that are adopted or learned by individuals within the group, right? And the choices that are made. Okay? So, one of the questions your textbook asks you is, what are some of the social and cultural elements, variables, that impacted your choices to be athletes or dancers, not an athlete, right? And you guys athletes, not dancers. So think back to when you were younger. Who can remember why they got into playing sport? Or why did you get into dancing, not sport? Anybody remember what the influence was? What got you going?
Probably following the footsteps of my older sister.
Older sister? Okay.
And my mom, too.
Because they're both very active. Right. So we've got parents and siblings.
Friends, like soccer was just what everyone played when I was younger, so I just played too.
So the peer group, so you just started playing, right? What about dancing? Do you remember why you started dancing rather than sport?
I don't. My parents said I would dance before I even knew what dance was, and that I was begging to do ballet, and they didn't even know how I knew about it, and so obviously I don't even know.
Okay. But then your parents enabled that behaviour.
Yes.
Right. I remember watching old Corbett, the military Shiva at the 72 Olympics on the telly, and I was already dancing, similar. And I watched them, and I was like, I want to do that. Oh my gosh, I want to do that. So the closest gym for my parents to put me in was like a 45-minute drive away. And I was lucky that they were willing to do that to take me, right? Because if our parents don't support what we want to do, we don't get to do it. So most of you had families that supported you in being active and taking you there, and maybe, you know, depending on your sport, you may have had to have paid. Samantha, put the phone away. You may have had to pay to be in that sport, right? So all of these are constraints that impact how well you move now. Now, of course, you've got physical, you guys are great at what you do. You're not normal, right? You're not just okay. You are really, really good at what you do. So on top of these social and cultural constraints, you also were born with many structural and functional constraints that allowed you to be really good at what you do, right? Because the two go together. Just having parents that take you to the gym, right, and pay money doesn't make you really good at gymnastics, okay? So, I want to look at the gender typing idea because it's really an important factor right now. There's a lot, the book doesn't really talk about transgender. I suspect the next version of the book will, but you know, right now, gender typing, bless you, people's choice of how they perceive themselves is a very big item. So we're going to simplify it a little bit and just look at men and women. Okay? So first off, the terminology is often used incorrectly in the media, right? So sex are biological, if the word sex means biological characteristics. So it's an individual constraint. I am most people, not everybody, but 99.9% of the people on the planet are born either male or female. Okay. Gender, on the other hand, is a learnt characteristic, a learnt concept, right? So you learn to identify as masculine. So I identify as a man, or I identify as a woman, right? Feminine. It's learned really early, probably by the time you're 1 year old, right? Obviously, I'm not cognitively aware of the fact that I'm identifying as a man or a woman or a boy or a girl at 1 year old. But when we look at media, when we look at going shopping, all right, then we see some very strong influence. So this room, boy or girl? Boy. Okay. This room, boy or girl? Girl. Why? Just because one is blue and one is pink? Right? Why is blue masculine and pink feminine? The only reason why is because that's how we feel about it. That's what we think, that's what we've learned. There's absolutely no reason for blue and pink to be masculine or feminine. Okay? And then, not only do we do that, then we do this to the poor little things. Right? And so, if a girl wants to wear blue, it's got to be pale powdery blue with sparkles in it, so that we know she's feminine, right? And if the boy wants to wear pink, ooh, well, maybe we might be okay with purple, right? So we have these very strong reactions that are illogical, okay? We're getting better at it because of the amount of coverage. Now, people are getting better at going, okay, I'm going to have a gender-neutral nursery. So gender-neutral colours are things like green, yellow, white. Right? Purple is generally considered gender-neutral rather than feminine. Personally, I love a guy that has the bottle to wear a pink shirt. I think pink looks great on guys, so I don't see the problem. All right? But it's not something, it's not wrong, right? It's just we perpetuate something we learned when we were young. Right? So when we're parents, we do the same thing. We're not trying to be unkind or mean or socially derisive to one gender or the other. It's just that's what we do in our culture. Right? Again, it's not a blame game. It's just trying to understand some of the variables that can impact movement, right? So the problem with gender typing when we are movement people is that these significant others in this child's life, so the parents, the family, when they're young, when you're teenagers, it's more likely to be your peer group than your family because parents are persona non grata for a few years while we're teenagers, right? And so we are encouraged to participate in what the adults perceive as gender-appropriate activities. Okay? So traditionally in the West, sport was more appropriate for boys. We'll come back to that in a minute. Girls didn't get to even participate in sport for a very, very long time. Right? Boys are kind of coerced or manipulated into masculine type sports. Girls get coerced into more feminine type sports, right? If your daughter wanted to play football, is that going to be supported? What if your boy wants to be an ice skater? Do we support that? So we have these pervasive, these underlying background feelings about movement that we don't really have a reason for. It's just, that's just how I feel about it, right? Because it's so learned at such an early age. But that can restrict activity choices for both boys and girls. Okay. So let's look at the example of a marathon. Marathon as a sport was first seen at kind of Olympic levels in 1896. It was a slightly shorter distance originally. Right? The current distance became the official distance in 1921. Women were not allowed to run in a marathon until 1970. 1970. Now that's not in your lifetime, because you're all young people. That's my lifetime. Someone was going to stop me running a marathon because I was a girl. Right? That's insane. And they had all kinds of reasons. Oh, well, running like that's not good for women because it jiggles all their feminine bits, and then they won't be able to have babies. Right? Title IX was developed in 1972, and it is mistakenly believed that Title IX was created to allow girls to take part in sport. That's not actually what Title IX says. But one of the outcomes of Title IX is that it opened up sport to girls. Okay. And still, so that came out in 1972, and things have improved in school and in college for girls and women to take part in sport, and yet in high school, less than 50% of high school girls still participate in organized sports or games, right? They opt out very young. So we see some attitudes that are improving, right? But we still get these kind of innate feelings about our girls versus our boys. So when we look at play, if you go to the park and you watch families playing, right? The boys are allowed to play rough and tumble type games. But the girls, if they want to play rough and tumble type games, oh no, you might get hurt. Come on, let's go and play on the swing. Right? So sedentary play tends to be encouraged for girls, whereas very active, physically active play tends to be more encouraged for boys. Right? I was lucky. I had parents who were very open-minded and forward-thinking, and so when I said I was going to climb the tree, they went, okay, go ahead. And then when I got stuck, they climbed up to help me get down again, because I always got stuck. I could climb up really high, but then I couldn't get back down. Right? So what do the girls that climb trees and want to play rough and tumble get called? Tomboys. Why am I a boy? Because I want to climb a tree. Right? You see? So you got to start thinking big picture, right? We say things and we use language that influences that young girl in her behavior. Because if she doesn't want to be a tomboy, because none of her friends are tomboys, or her sister isn't a tomboy, then maybe she stops climbing the tree. Even though she really enjoys climbing the tree, she doesn't want that label attached to her. Right? You've got to be pretty strong-minded to go, oh, I don't care about the label, I'm going to do it anyway. Right? Some of us did, and that's why we're here. Most of us don't, and that's why women are not very active compared to men. So that means that we're looking at a situation where many girls don't get to develop their full potential for moving because they're encouraged to not move. But it's not all about the girls. It's also looking at a situation where boys are often told they can't do something they want to do and they have to play a sport they don't really like. Right? Because that's what's expected of them. Okay? I'm going to turn the light off for the next. Oh, this isn't going to work. I'm going to have to open up another. It won't work in Collaborate. I keep forgetting that. Ay. Okay, hold on. Open up another one. Alright, so I'm going to show you some photos. They change quite quickly, right? I want you just to say, is that acceptable or not acceptable? Right? Ready? Right? So we look at someone's choice of movement and we make decisions based on, well, I don't like the girl with muscles because girls aren't meant to have. I mean, actually, I suspect she cheated because her muscles are a bit bigger than girls could really physiologically develop, so I expect there was a little bit of help there. But, you know, that's her choice, right? And we kind of go, ew, a woman with muscles, ew, right? But the dancer's okay because she's like pretty and the male ballet dancer is like, what's the first thing we think about a male ballet dancer or a male ice skater? What's the first thing we think? Go on. What's your immediate reaction, male ballet dancer?
I wish I had that kind of rhythm.
That's impressive then. Right? Well, I know what my dad would say. My dad would say, queer as a coot. Right? He's got to be gay, because otherwise he wouldn't be a ballet dancer. let me tell you, ballet dancers test out, when you look at a block of fitness assessments, right? So strength, flexibility, endurance, power. Ballet dancers test out over any other athlete, over the whole block. They are super strong. Imagine walking around the stage holding this girl on one hand. Right? And you want to pick up girlfriend on one hand and walk around for a little bit? Yeah. They are really strong. Okay? All right, let's go back here now. So when we're learning our role in society, there are several models in the research, but one of the popular ones is this idea that we build our identity, our role, on these three factors. So our socializing agents. So these are people who are influential in our lives, right? Our significant others. So our family, our peers, our coaches, our teachers would all be socializing agents for us. And then the second variable is the social situation. So the places where my socialization takes place. Okay, so it could be the school, it could be at home, what games are we playing, what toys are available. Okay. And then the third element are these personal attributes, right? Me. Okay? My individual constraints. And a big one there is my perceived sport ability, or my perceived movement ability. Do I believe I can be successful at movement? Or if I try that, am I going to fail? Right? So this research is a little old, and I have to say that I'm not sure it would hold true or as true if the research was rerun now, okay? When we're younger, our parents are very important for many of the reasons that we've already discussed today, all right? They take us there, they pay for us, right? They support it. The research suggests that fathers are more likely to enforce gender typing than mothers. So the dad is more likely to say, well, I'm not going to let my son do ballet. He's going to go play baseball. The mum is more likely to go, well, if he really wants to try ballet, let's at least let him have a try. Okay? Again, it's old. I'm not sure that attitude would hold true if we researched it again now. It might depend on which country we looked at. It might depend on what area of the country we looked at. Okay. Again, old same-sex parent might be more influential. So the idea is that if you're a girl, that what your mum does is more influential, and if you're a boy, what your dad does is more influential. In my experience, it was the other way around, so the research is an approximation. It's never the absolute every single picture. And again, I might be willing to think that if we reran this research, that we would see something different now. Right? However, it is true to say that because they're the ones with the money, they do influence choices that children get to make. Right? And again, in my lovely Pottery Barn catalogue, it's just the perfect thing for this. All right, so I love this one. I love this one, right? Because here we have Mum and Dad doing the shopping. However, having done the shopping, guess who gets to do the cooking? Not in my house, because I don't cook. Dr. Pascoe does the cooking, but again, we're not very conventional, right? If I buy an ironing board, who am I giving the ironing board to? My daughter or my son? Always odd to me that, right? Because girls, how many clothes do you have in your wardrobe that you have to iron? Guys, who irons your shirts? Your mom? No. She's not going to iron your shirt when you're out of college. You are going to have to iron your own shirts to look good for your interviews. So when we buy the ironing board toy, we should give it to the boys, because they're the ones that need to learn how to iron. Right? When we look at, like, the basketball, right? So we have to have the blue, red, and the basketball and all the sports stuff, right? But the girls get the Wendy house and... Okay. So it's pervasive, it's underlying in our culture without us realizing that we're doing it. It's not us deliberately being mean, it's just how we do and how we think. Okay? So, if we're lucky, parents will bias what they offer their kids towards experiences they had that were beneficial or meaningful to them. Right? The best predictor, so this is an important point, the best predictor of adult involvement in a sport was participation in movement and sport as a child and a teenager. Right? So kids who don't get engaged in movement don't become adults who stay engaged in games and sport and moving. So it's difficult then to tackle the overwhelming obesity and overweight problems if these people are not moving. Right? I can't just tackle their diet, that doesn't work, we know it doesn't work. I can't just tackle, we'll go out and move, because they don't want to go out and move. Becomes very problematical. Siblings. So for most kids, the sibling is the first person they get to play with, right? Or in my situation with my sister, the first person who poked my eyes and bit me, she literally bit all the way through my hand. So, yeah, we didn't play much. We have lots of research on how girls behave. So generally, girls tend to follow what if they have an older brother, then they're going to want to do that. But we don't have very much research about boys. I think this is going to change. I think that you are going to go out into the work world at a very interesting time because of the more socially acceptable situation with transgender individuals now. I think that they will have to look at what the boys do, what influences boys, what influences a child who identifies as something that they're not being told they are. Right? As we, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, do you think, is there any studies about like only children and doing sports, like team sports and stuff, versus like children who have like siblings and children.
That's an interesting question. That's an interesting question. I guess if you grow up in a big family, you're more mentally prepared for the team concept. I don't do team concept. No. If I'm going to lose, I want to lose because I lost, not because someone else didn't do their job. So the whole team thing is an anathema to me because I don't know how you play those games. Although some of you pick games that are actually individual, it's just presented as a team sport. But football is a team sport, right? There's no individual in that. Soccer is a team sport. Softball, baseball are really individual sports that they fake out as team sports. Track is track gymnastics, right? We're individual sports that they create a team because it makes everyone feel better. Right? No, I think that's a really interesting question. There probably is, it's not my area of study, but I think that would be interesting to take a look at. That would be a good research project or independent study. Peer group, so the older we get, the more important our peer group becomes, particularly in adolescence, as teenagers. Right? Here's where the peer group can be positive. So Craig said he got into soccer because that's what everybody played, right? So the whole gang went to play soccer because that's what people did. What if you want to be active, but your peer group want to go and be computer scientists or musicians? Bless you. Okay? Then do you follow your peer group or do you stick to your own path? It's difficult, right? A lot of that will depend upon your individual constraints. What's your personality like? Do you need the support of the group? Are you willing to go it alone? Can you be organized enough to go, well, I'm going to go do this, but I'd like to see you guys later and maybe we could grab a coffee. So the research on coaches and teachers is a little bit equivocal. Some research says they're highly influential. Some research says, When we look at the preschool literature, there isn't any of that issue that teachers are highly influential on the children at the CDC. Some of the research suggests that really the teacher or the coach is just reinforcing the behaviors that are being taught at home. I'm not sure I agree with that personally. But I guess there is the argument that you wouldn't be there playing the sport if that parent wasn't taking you. And so the coach only gets to influence you because the parent's already supporting the participation. So what we do know for certain is the negative effect that teachers and coaches can have on children. Right? So we have, we've got, first off, the fact that you can influence whether moving is fun or whether it's a punishment, right? Why do the coaches insist on punishing the athletes by making them run? Why would you use movement as a punishment? Right? Movement is supposed to be fun. Bless you. It's meant to be fun. Right? Enjoyable, successful. Okay? The other problem we have is something called aversive socialization. And aversive socialization occurs when an individual has a negative experience with movement. So when we're looking at children, we're talking about a PE class or a Little League experience or something at a rec center, although that would be more unusual, I think, right? When the teacher or the coach embarrasses the individual in front of everybody else, right? Or when they place the emphasis for taking part on winning, on performance, and not on having fun and engaging and getting healthy, right? When failing is seen as a bad thing and winning is the only thing that counts, right? The fact that you don't learn very much by winning, we learn a lot more when we fail and we have to try it again, right? So this aversive socialization could, in an extreme situation, impact that person from ever wanting to engage in something that was movement-oriented ever again. Right? He's awake, it's okay. You don't have to wake him up. All right? So, what's the way we want to approach? So on the playground, we're trying to make this as fun as possible. When we are coaching our athletes, training should be as fun as possible, right? I have to be creative as the coach. Yes, we've got to do this drill 1,800 times to make sure we've got it right to put it in the game. But there must be ways of approaching the drill where I can make it fun rather than tedious and boring. Okay? I've got to go to the gym and train because I've got to be strong enough to perform well and stay healthy. Does the gym have to be boring, or can we make weight training fun? I think that LV does a great job of making his gym a fun place to be. Well, okay. We have some nods, we have some uh-uhs. Sometimes.
When he's in a good mood.
When he's in a good mood. I like when he's got the big tire thing out and he's playing rolling the tire. That always looks like a load of fun to me.
Yeah.
However, I'm not the one having to do it, so maybe it's not as much fun when you're doing it as it is watching it. Right? So we have this huge potential then to stimulate enjoyment in activity or to make someone really go, ugh, okay, I'm going to go read a book. Right? All right, how many more have I got here? Okay, we're going to stop here. We will pick this up on Monday, but we only have a few slides left, so we will also start chapter 13.